My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my ranking of Radio Silence's filmography from worst to best, and this video will have spoilers for their movies, including Abigail, so there's your warning. But, as you'll hear shortly, I'm very mixed on these two. I think they've made some good movies, I think they've made some terrible movies. Let's discuss beginning with the worst movie, and it's Devil's Due. I watched this movie 2 months ago for my review. I remember absolutely nothing about it. I just remember it was very boring, it was never effective. It's, yeah, that's all I have to say. It's just a movie I didn't like at all and didn't leave any sort of impact, which is really the worst kind of movie. The second worst movie directed by Radio Silence is Scream. And I hate the title for this movie because it should be called Scream 5. Scream came out in 1996. You can't just steal the original title. I really despise when movies do that. But the more I sit with this movie, the less I like it. I originally thought Scream 6 was the worst of the franchise, but I just got more issues with this movie. Let's begin talking about the new cast, and hot take, I don't like them. I don't think anyone does a good job. Melissa Barrera is the most overrated actress working nowadays. She has not an ounce of screen presence, and it shows in this movie. I never cared for her character or her relationship with her sister, and I really hated what they did with Dewey and Gale by splitting them up again. It just felt worn out by this point. I think it's unsatisfying, and for them to kill Dewey the way they did just felt so lazy. Like they just turned him into the biggest idiot just to kill him off. Like really? You're really going to do that? On top of that, I thought the meta commentary of toxic fandoms and recalls just sucked. The entire movie felt confused in what it was trying to say, and it's just not as funny or as tense as the original Scream movie. It just felt like a pale imitation. It's 2 hours long, it felt much longer, it drags. I did not like this movie at all. I think it's just terrible. The third worst movie by Radio Silence is Scream 6. Now, I do hate this movie. The cast is still very bad, especially Melissa Barrera. I think the reveals of who Ghostface is just embarrassing. And the last act of this movie is just a complete mess. Like, nobody dies. Everyone you thought would have died by getting stabbed a bunch of times, nope, they're still alive. Just really, you can't kill them off. It's ballless. It is a cowardly move. And I just think so much of this movie is boring. It takes place in New York, but they don't utilize the setting. But the reason why I decided I like this one a bit more than Scream 5 is because I thought there was potential with the opening scene. And I do think the latter scene is intense, and I do like the scene in the gas station. So it's flawed, it's a terrible movie. I doubt I'd ever watch it again, but it does have a few standout moments. Now we can talk about the good ones, beginning with Radio Silence's second best movie, and it's their newest one, Abigail. Okay, I have a lot to say here. So let's begin talking about the performances. And Melissa Barrera does a terrible job. She's not a good actress. I feel like I'm being gaslit by everyone saying that she's great. She doesn't have an ounce of personality. She is bland. She is forgettable. She just does nothing well. I think people are just manufacturing this hype behind her because of her politics, and it's just baffling. But her performance aside, I like the cast. Angus Cloud, Kevin Durand do a good job, but the standouts are Dan Stevens, who just brings so much charisma and personality to this movie. Alicia Wheel, who I think does everything she needs to perfectly. And Catherine Newton, who is just fantastic and filled with personality. That scene where she turns into a vampire, but it turns out she's like a puppet. Loved it. Loved it. Best scene in the movie. The editing there is just top notch. It was effective. It was goofy. But it was just incredible. Like, that scene, wonderful. I think the premise to this movie is really fun. I like the single location. That scene also where Catherine Newton discovers the pool filled with bodies, I thought was effective. I watched the trailer after I did my review last night, and I was just baffled by how much they showed. But that scene is really great. I like how bloody this movie is. Definitely reminds me of Ready or Not with the body parts blowing up. I love the scene where Abigail grows her hand back. That's a really cool practical effect. I thought there was some good laughs to be had. So I definitely enjoyed so much of this movie. My favorite part is how it is aware of your expectations when it comes to vampire movies and how a crucifix or garlic or a steak can kill them. And it turns out that's not the case here. So the characters are just trying everything and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. And it keeps you guessing, it keeps you on edge. And then when Catherine Newton's character does get bit, you're like, is she going to turn? Is she not? Like, you just never know. There's this uncertainty with the world building, which I thought was just wonderful. Really smart. Really. But then we get to the ending, and man, goodness, when Giancarlo Esposito shows up and he wants to team up with Frank and he turns him into a vampire, I was just like, oh, this movie's going to get incredible. And then Lambert instantly gets killed, and I was just like, oh, really? And then Frank, they turn Frank into this villain. And you know what? I don't like that decision. Frank is a bit of an asshole throughout the movie, but that scene where Melissa Barrera's talking about her kid and he's just like, stop turning yourself into a victim. He was 100% correct. And it felt like the movie wanted to villainize him based off that one moment, which I thought was just fucking stupid. I hated that. And then he's now the new big bad guy, and Melissa Barrera and Abigail have to work together to fight him, and I thought it was just cringy. Suddenly, Abigail, this vampire who's hundreds of years old, who has killed countless bodies, has had a change of heart. Bullshit. It would have been better if Frank and Abigail went after Melissa Barrera, or if he turns Melissa Barrera into a vampire and they both go after Abigail. Just something like that. Like, they just picked the worst possible decision to go. And it was just one baffling decision after another. Because then he bites her and he's just like, dance, puppet, dance. And she doesn't dance. And she doesn't turn into a vampire. And it's because he's too new to being a vampire. So the rules don't apply to him. And I'm like, that feels lazy. So I didn't like that at all. And then we get this build-up throughout the entire movie of Abigail's dad. And it's Matthew Good. Like, we don't see him in action, and the actor is Matthew Good. Like, good actor. I love him in Watchmen, in The Imitation Game, but really? And then with her leaving the mansion with the lollipop, I just felt like it was trying to recapture the ending of Ready or Not, and yeah, it didn't really work for me. Lots of fun, but the last 15 minutes just dropped the ball entirely for me. But then we get to my favorite, and it's Ready or Not. Now, what's really smart about Ready or Not is how the husband hates his family. He's a good guy, but by the end of the movie, he turns out to be no different. He gets corrupted. Well, the douchebag brother, who's constantly making wrong decisions throughout the movie, gets redeemed. And I just love those two character arcs. Mark O'Brien, I think, does a very good job, but Adam Brody is fantastic here. Like, truly fantastic. Samara Weaving is, like, so good in this movie. Like, she carries this movie perfectly. She has plenty of personality. I just love her performance here. I love how bloody this movie is. I'll touch on the ending in just a bit. I think the movie can be quite funny. I like the single location, just like Abigail. I thought that was well utilized. The premise is lots of fun, and this movie can be tense when it needs to be. There's one scene where she gets shot in her hand, and she has to use the hole and put it on a nail to lift herself up, and it's just tough to watch. And then we get to the ending, which I just absolutely love. Well, it turns out, oh, they were incorrect. Nothing will happen if they don't kill her. And bam, they all just explode one by one, and it's just perfection. It is so funny and so bloody and so over the top, and it's just wonderful. And I love the line, "I'm divorcing you," and then the husband blows up, and then she goes outside, and they're like, "What happened?" "In-laws." And she's just covered in blood, smoking a cigarette. Perfect ending. Then it cuts to Love Me Tender. Great song. Just a great movie. I love it. It's a total blast. Maybe some issues, but honestly, I just think it's awesome. So, that's my ranking of Radio Silence's filmography, but what's yours? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Stay tuned for more videos soon. And Gavin, out.